Today I wanted to explain the purpose of this ceremony a little more in depth. First of all, it's interesting that many people may not know within Buddhism, this is perhaps the only ceremony that the Buddha practiced, that we can verifiably say that is true. This particular tradition is very essential in awakening one's bodhicitta. That means aspiration for enlightenment. As I stated before, it states in many sutras, especially the sutra of the rice seed sutra, which is a very old sutra, perhaps one of the original teachings of the Buddha. And in that sutra, it says, if you understand dependent origination is enlightenment, enlightenment is dependent origination. So that means if we are able to understand the interconnectedness of all things, that in therein lies enlightenment. So today, the ceremony we do, why do we perform such a thing? If we believe and understand the idea of interdependent nature and the dependency upon other beings, we must respect both past, present, and future. This is what we are doing each service, each practice. Because many people practice Buddhism for themselves. That is a very immature way to practice Buddhism. Actually, Buddhism is the practice to benefit. If we believe and understand that basic concept of dependent origination, we cannot just benefit ourselves. We cannot just think about ourselves. We have to be able to benefit all beings equally. Also view all beings equally. Understand the idea of cause and condition as well. That we are important, but yet not important. Special, but not special. In the ceremony, we offer in that guise the idea of the correct cause. Correct cause means in Buddhism, the idea of karma, which is different than Vedism. Karma is this kind of, in the ancient Vedic tradition, is this kind of other power, this law of the universe, in which it inflicts upon us if we act out of line or incorrect. That is based on any action. So karma is usually translated as action. But in Buddhism, action is different. The karma we create is the karma of cognition, of thought, of idea. So therefore, simply observing something is different than acting, making an action. So therefore, in Buddhism, in order to change karma as well as create karma, we must have the correct mindset, the correct action. That is why, what is the first of the Eightfold Path? Right view. We have to have a right view of the world, of reality, the idea of dependent origination, in order to progress in Buddhism. With that in mind, we as bodhisattvas, if we are based on this concept of dependent origination, are able to benefit all beings, whether we can see them or not, whether we can think of them or imagine them or not, or comprehend them or not. The simple action of us following this natural occurrence, this natural manifestation of Buddha nature, is done through this ceremony. First of all, enshrining that each being, each ancestor, of course, we automatically start with our own, because that is the most closest to us, the most recognizable. Most people know who their parents are, and perhaps grandparents, but we may not know beyond that. Therefore, we embody them in the stupa of Namyo Renge Kyo. The stupa meaning the place where the relics of the body are, the Buddha are enshrined. This is the creation of the Toba. Also in that Toba, we offer the Dharma. That is Namyo Renge Kyo. We offer what the Dharma does by the simple act of offering. Again, this is quite different than how most people approach Buddhism. I would actually argue that that is not the way of the Bodhisattva, but the way of the Shavaka, or the Prataki Buddha, the private practitioners, which is a partial awakening, partial enlightenment. But actually, this enlightenment, this idea of dependent origination is supposed to move our Buddha nature to understanding the idea of compassion and wisdom. Therefore, we enshrine these relics into these toba that are created. That's why there is some cutout in the idea of that. Then also we offer incense. Also we offer water. Why water? Because water is seen as the idea of purification, but also of quenching suffering. So therefore, when someone is suffering, when someone passes away, first thing to dry out our lips. So therefore, during the makuragyo, the pillow service, we offer water to the person right after they pass away on their lips, so as not to create craving, to give them, remove anxiety, remove suffering as best we can. Then we also offer water to the deceased spirits, especially the hungry ghosts, because hungry ghosts are unable to enjoy water. They're pictured as a big head, swollen bellies, very thin neck. So if they drink water, it turns to fire, to acid. If they eat something, cannot go down the throat, and if it's able to, becomes fire in their stomach. So therefore, even if they see something or want to enjoy, they cannot. So therefore, at this time, we offer purified water that they may be able to enjoy without suffering. Then the flags that you see actually comes from a part in the Lotus Sutra, that it says, the suffering being saw the meal of a great king. So therefore, that was offered to them. And then also all of the suffering of fire, etc., was quenched by the water of Amiritha tea, like a sweet tea coming down. This is what we offer to the deceased beings, to the suffering beings in the world. That is because that is a liberation for self and others. This is all based on the idea of dependent origination. That's why I believe this is the most traditional aspect of Buddhism. Also, interesting to think, early Buddhism, as we are finding out with many sutras that are being found and translated within the old kingdom of Sri Lanka, which were deposited by King Ashoka, against the sutras of the Theravadan or the Hinayana school, they see that many teachings were removed or changed. So therefore, we are lucky to have this deposit. So therefore, we are able to see that Buddhism's main idea was not this metaphysical idea about something far away. Enlightenment was meant to be this life. Also, enlightenment is able to be attained by anyone, men and women equal, sentient beings, non-sentient, all beings, all things equal in that sense, non-discrimination. Also in the idea that there is no system or caste system of good or bad. So therefore, all beings have the same capacity to attain enlightenment. There we're seeing that. And actually, that is why the Lotus Sutra, people ask, the Lotus Sutra, is that the word of the Buddha? Actually, purpose of Lotus Sutra was that after Buddha has passed away, and then at the time, during King Ashoka, I think, and after even the Buddha, two types of traditions came. One which focused simply on the monastic, male monastic practice, which then changed things to show, of course, their leader. But actually, discounting early Buddhism, where the four kinds of devotees were equal: monk, nun, laymen, laywomen. The Lotus Sutra's purpose was to restore that idea of early Buddhism. That is why these teachings are so essential. That is why it's said to be the highest teaching, because we, at this period, 2,500, 3,000 years after Buddha passed away, we may not be able to understand the early Buddha sutras, because even if those sutras, imagine if those sutras in Sri Lanka were not found or were not kept, we couldn't be able to compare. We would think the oldest sutras were the way of the Buddha, which, if we believe that, Buddhism would be a discriminatory practice and sexist. But we realize the early concept of Buddhism was more simple. Buddha said enlightenment is not difficult. Enlightenment is simple. Also, the purpose of enlightenment is to allow beings in this life, here and now, to awaken to their full potential. That means to remove anxiety. Buddhism was meant to remove anxiety. What does that mean? Actually, it means Buddhism was there to fight cult and superstition. India, lots of cult and superstition, especially Buddha's time. They would restore the person or the being's ability to say, I don't think so, doesn't make sense, right? Based on their reality, their understanding, and challenge superstition. Otherwise, challenge in how do you say, discrimination, idea that one being is more different or better than another. That was what the Buddhism point was for. Therefore, Lotus Sutra says, we are able to see things properly, and that to live as a human being, many times the way Buddhism is presented seems like very far off in the distance. Enlightenment seems so strange to us. Also, it seems so unattainable to us. But in actuality, Buddha's teaching was that in this life, we can attain enlightenment. It is simple. First of all, understanding dependent origination. Then, through dependent origination, we understand our interconnection with all beings. Therefore, invoking and cherishing and, how do you say, nourishing the idea of compassion. That means empathy towards other person's shoes, even though we cannot feel their emotion or understand their mind. We can, on the level of interdependence, understand each other and all sentient beings. Therefore, also, that teaching allows us to be able to benefit all beings. That is the way of the Bodhisattva. That is the purpose of Buddhism. It said that Buddhism was to remove anxiety, be able to allow beings to become patient and upright, happy, and have hope. That was the point of Buddhism. Seems very mundane, but extraordinary. Because Buddha, he wanted to bring forth the true being, the true human, our true nature, not to make something into a superstition or unattainable goal, or a special, or how do you say, secret thing. Buddha expected that enlightenment, his teaching was to liberate all sentient beings, no matter what their capacity is. Even if they like Buddhism, don't like Buddhism, against Buddhism, love Buddhism, doesn't matter. In this ceremony, we fulfill that goal of the Bodhisattva, the bigger mind, not of the small mind of ignorance, greed, and hatred of the three poisons, but the big mind of compassion and wisdom. That is why in the Lotus Sutra it says, you may engage in many different practices, meditation, study, but actually purpose of these practices, benefit of all beings. What do you do with that practice? Show me. And then through that practice, we manifest in our body, mind, and consciousness enlightenment. That was Buddha's way. That's not difficult. Because naturally, if we understand the interdependence, the dependent origination with each other, we are inspired to do such a thing if we really experience it. Plus, this ceremony was to enable us to start on the path, to actualize, to grow that Buddha nature naturally. How amazing is that? Don't need any doctrine, don't need any convincing, just experience. Each person their own challenge. That's why Buddha says, what we rely on is the Dharma. The Dharma is our understanding of reality. That is awakening based on the Buddha Dharma, the Buddha's teaching. He shares with us. Therefore, in our life, we can challenge. I don't think so. I don't believe that. No problem in Buddhism. Actually, we must do. And the other is to allow people to liberate themselves from cult. The cult of what? Not just a religious cult, but cult of anything that is against the basic idea of interdependence. The Buddha had the idea of the three seals, the idea of impermanence, interdependence, and awakening. These were the main thing. If the teaching or what you are doing does not contain those things, that is considered incorrect teaching. Right? So therefore, I don't need to convince people that. But the Lotus Sutra was brought forth in order to counteract the kind of they call it Buddhist authoritatism. What is that? To be authoritative. That they suddenly, of course, the male monk say they're a boss and others are below them, cannot attain the same as they do. But in actuality, these sutras show there are missing parts, remove and change the teaching. So therefore, we can see in these early sutras the true mind of the Buddha in early Buddhism. And then that is solidified and brought to the forefront in the Lotus Sutra. That is why Lotus Sutra was upheld. It's interesting, Nichiren Shonin, those teachings were not brought to Japan in the 13th century. They weren't aware of those sutras in Sri Lanka, because that is Gandhara Buddhism. Gandhara Buddhism originated in northern India. That is what most Buddhisms we have today are. Then even that Buddhism went to China, and China influenced with the idea of Confucianism. So therefore, they also kept the idea that, man is a male, monk is top. Because they thought if they introduce the true teaching of Buddhism, people won't believe. They'll say, what? I don't understand. So therefore, they changed. But in actuality, in the 13th century, Nichiren Shonin understood from his study and practice, Lotus Sutra is this original early Buddhism. Lotus Sutra was brought forth in order to restore that. That is why Nichiren Shonin is not the founder of a new sect of Buddhism. He has the idea of restoring original traditional Buddhism, which is based in the Lotus Sutra. And that was, of course, he understood the purpose of the Lotus Sutra was to restore and remove the authoritative misunderstanding of the, monk class. And to be able to allow all beings to understand that they have the ability to attain enlightenment in this moment, in this life, and to be able to liberate themselves. And that enlightenment is not something that's beyond us or seems like magical. It is there, but we have to practice and study to be able to see it. So therefore, we are potential Buddhas. So therefore, this ceremony is very positive. This is an action that recreates the correct cause and condition to both awaken our own Buddha nature as well as others. Okay. So therefore, thank you very much for practicing today and joining us. Let us put our hands together, Gasho. Right, Namyo Renge Kyo, Namyo Renge Kyo, Namyo Renge Kyo.